Savannah Gold thought she was just meeting her boss to talk about work. She had no idea she was stepping into a trap set by a man she trusted, someone who would kill her in a crowded parking lot, hide her body, and then text her family pretending to be her. This chilling sequence of events took place in Jacksonville, Florida, a large, bustling coastal city where thousands of people navigate their daily routines in the common spaces of suburban commerce and employment. In the quiet, well-established neighborhood of Mandarin, a popular local restaurant known as the Bonefish Grill served as a regular gathering hub for the community. It was a busy, fast-paced workplace where employees naturally formed close connections as they worked long shifts together. Among the dedicated staff at this location was 21-year-old Savannah Gold. Savannah was a vibrant, multifaceted young woman who was widely recognized by her peers and family as a deeply talented artist, a passionate lacrosse player, and an excellent server at the restaurant. She was an individual with an incredibly bright future ahead of her, balancing her creative, artistic pursuits with her daily professional responsibilities. However, beneath the polished, ordinary surface of this popular dining establishment lay a hidden, deeply toxic dynamic that would ultimately fracture the peace of the entire Jacksonville community. Savannah had become entangled in a secret supervisor-subordinate relationship with 28-year-old Lee Rodarte Jr., who worked as the culinary manager at the exact same Bonefish Grill location. This relationship was kept completely hidden from the restaurant's upper management, creating an environment characterized by intense secrecy, professional risk, and a profound underlying power imbalance. It was a highly volatile connection, fraught with unspoken tensions and personal conflicts that grew more severe over time. In any professional environment, a hidden romance between a manager and a direct report introduces an unpredictable element. But in this specific instance, the relationship became a breeding ground for manipulation and deep-seated anger. As the culinary manager, Rodarte held a position of significant institutional authority over Savannah's employment, while Savannah was vulnerable to the emotional and professional control he could exert over her life. For months, this secret nexus remained entirely undetected by their coworkers and general management, a quiet storm brewing behind the kitchen doors and across the asphalt of the restaurant's exterior property. Savannah was forced to navigate a highly complex and stressful emotional landscape, completely unaware that her boss was harboring a dark, dangerous obsession. This hidden relationship wasn't just a simple breach of company policy. It became the direct catalyst for a calculated, premeditated tragedy that would soon unfold in the most public of spaces, leaving local law enforcement to untangle a web of digital camouflage and cold-blooded deception. The afternoon of August 2, 2017, began like any other hot, humid summer day in northern Florida, with the dedicated staff of the Mandarin Bonefish Grill preparing the dining room and kitchen for the upcoming busy evening shift. At exactly 5:31 p.m., Savannah Gold arrived early for her scheduled evening shift, parking her car in the restaurant's lot and preparing to walk inside to begin her work. The restaurant's exterior surveillance cameras were fully active, quietly and continuously recording the routine movements of the parking lot. The recorded footage captured Savannah as she stepped out of her vehicle and began walking across the hot asphalt. However, instead of heading straight for the main employee entrance to clock in, she directed her steps toward another vehicle parked further out in the lot, a car belonging to her culinary manager, Lee Rodarte Jr. The subsequent surveillance analysis performed by detectives would later reveal a highly critical piece of premeditation regarding Rodarte's actions that afternoon. Rodarte had arrived at the lot much earlier than necessary and had intentionally backed his vehicle into that specific parking space exactly 25 minutes before Savannah even arrived on the property. This specific positioning was deliberate and calculated, ensuring that his vehicle was primed for a quick, unobstructed departure and positioned away from the immediate line of sight of casual onlookers or restaurant patrons. Savannah approached the passenger side of Rodarte's vehicle, opened the door, and slid into the front seat. To any casual observer glancing out a window or driving through the lot at that moment, it might have looked like an entirely routine brief meeting between a manager and an employee discussing a schedule modification, a shift cover, or an ordinary workplace matter. But the reality inside the tight confines of that vehicle was incredibly tense and rapidly escalating. The secret relationship had reached a dangerous boiling point, and this meeting was the physical convergence of weeks of hidden volatility and supervisor-subordinate conflict. Savannah entered the car trusting that she was simply speaking to someone she knew intimately, a colleague and a partner, entirely unaware that the man sitting in the driver's seat had already orchestrated a physical trap for her. The surveillance camera continued to roll in the distance, documenting the quiet exterior of the heavily tinted vehicle, capturing the final moments that Savannah Gold would ever be seen alive by the outside world. It was a chilling, quiet prelude to an explosion of lethal violence that would occur within a matter of minutes, forever transforming an ordinary workplace parking lot into the scene of a brutal, cold-blooded homicide. What occurred next inside the tight, isolated confines of Lee Rodarte Jr.'s parked vehicle was a brutal, desperate, and heroic struggle for survival. At exactly 5:45 p.m., a mere 14 minutes after Savannah had willingly entered the car to speak with her manager, the restaurant's surveillance camera captured a sudden, violent, and jarring shift in the vehicle's movement. The manufacturing tint on Rodarte's car windows was exceptionally heavy, completely blocking a direct visual view of the interior cabin from the outside, but it could not conceal the stark, physical reality of the violence taking place behind the glass. The vehicle began shaking violently on the camera feed, rocking back and forth under the sheer force of an intense physical altercation. For several long, agonizing minutes, the heavy car continued to sway and pitch on its suspension, providing irrefutable visual evidence of a life-or-death struggle occurring within the vehicle. As Savannah Gold fought desperately for her life against her culinary manager, the passenger side door of the vehicle was seen opening and closing repeatedly on the security footage. It was a silent, terrifying visual of a victim attempting to break free from her attacker, reaching out for the safety of the open air and the public parking lot, only to be repeatedly and forcefully pulled back into the darkness of the cabin by Rodarte. The erratic, frantic movement of that passenger door stood as a permanent testament to the ferocity of Savannah's resistance. Inside the vehicle, Rodarte was using his physical size and position of authority to completely overpower the 21-year-old server, detached from the reality that he was committing a capital crime in broad daylight in his own employer's parking lot. The physical struggle was prolonged and relentless, a horrific 10-minute window where Savannah used every single ounce of her strength to resist the assault. The detailed surveillance analysis would later become the absolute central pillar of the prosecution's case during legal proceedings because even without a direct, clear line of sight to Rodarte's hands, the sheer physics of the vehicle's violent rocking told a story of intentional homicide that no defense attorney could explain away or justify. It was a sequence of pure terror that eventually ended in absolute, eerie stillness, a quiet settling of the vehicle's suspension that signaled the tragic end of Savannah's resistance. She was violently silenced in the very lot where she had arrived to work her shift, leaving her culinary manager alone in the driver's seat with a deceased victim and the immediate necessity of constructing a cover-up. By 5:55 p.m., the violent shaking of the vehicle had completely ceased, and the cold, calculated physical cover-up began in earnest. Lee Rodarte Jr. stepped out of his driver's side door, appearing completely calm and unfazed to the external cameras as he walked across the hot asphalt directly toward Savannah's parked, unlocked vehicle. He opened her car door, reached inside the cabin to grab a specific personal item, and then walked back to his own vehicle to secure it. But he was far from finished with his meticulous manipulation of the physical environment. In a highly sinister move designed to control the narrative of her disappearance from the very beginning, Rodarte walked back over to Savannah's parked car, knelt down by the front driver's side wheel, and intentionally punctured her front left tire. This deliberate tire sabotage was a calculated effort to create a physical illusion for the rest of the restaurant staff, management, and her family. By slashing her front left tire, Rodarte wanted to make her personal car look entirely disabled by natural mechanical misfortune. His logic was twisted but clear when coworkers or managers later noticed her vehicle sitting abandoned in the lot with a flat tire and realized Savannah was missing from her shift. They would naturally assume she had experienced tire trouble and had willingly hitched a ride out of the lot with a passing friend or an unrecorded vehicle. It was a physical smokescreen designed to buy him critical time, delaying any immediate search, alarm, or police suspicion. Subsequent forensic analysis would confirm that the front left tire had been deliberately slashed with a sharp tool, perfectly matching the surveillance video footage of Rodarte kneeling directly by the wheel. At 6:04 p.m., after ensuring the physical staging of the lot was complete, Rodarte slid back into his driver's seat and drove away from the Bonefish Grill parking lot, with Savannah's body still hidden inside his vehicle. He cruised down the public streets of Jacksonville, navigating the evening traffic while carrying the evidence of a brutal homicide in his car, entirely committed to the multi-layered strategy he was constructing to outsmart the police. Savannah was never seen exiting that vehicle alive, as her manager drove her toward a remote location, leaving her disabled car behind as a silent monument to his deception. With Savannah's body hidden securely in his vehicle and her personal car staged as disabled in the restaurant parking lot, Lee Rodarte Jr. turned his full attention to the digital realm to further insulate himself from creeping suspicion. At 6:30 p.m., roughly 30 minutes after Savannah was officially scheduled to clock in for her evening server shift, her family's mobile phones suddenly lit up with a series of incoming text messages sent directly from her number. These fraudulent texts were packed with bizarre phrasing, uncharacteristic language, and multiple severe misspellings. The messages claimed that Savannah was low-key running away with a great guy and was actively leaving the town for good. Rodarte was attempting to use the victim's own phone to frame her sudden disappearance as a completely voluntary runaway situation, hoping her parents would stop looking for her and simply assume she had made a reckless, impulsive personal choice to flee the area with a new boyfriend. However, this layer of digital camouflage suffered from an immediate and fatal flaw. Rodarte severely underestimated the deep relationship and intimate daily communication style between Savannah and her mother, Sharon Gold. The moment Sharon read the incoming text messages on her screen, a profound sense of alarm and disbelief set in. She immediately flagged the specific word, low-key, and the uncharacteristically poor spelling as being completely fraudulent and forced. Sharon knew her daughter's authentic digital voice perfectly. Savannah never typed like that, nor did she ever use that specific vocabulary or grammar when communicating with her family. Within hours of the crime, Rodarte's carefully planned digital smokescreen had completely backfired, acting as an immediate, flashing red flag for a kidnapping rather than a successful diversion. Instead of placating the family and buying him weeks of silence, the texts firmly convinced the Gold family that Savannah was in immediate, extreme danger, destroying Rodarte's narrative before the night was even over. He had treated her mobile device as a simple tool to rewrite history, but his total ignorance of the victim's true texting habits left a glaring forensic and psychological trail that would quickly lead sheriff's detectives straight to his door. Over the course of the next 2 days, August 3rd and 4th, Savannah Gold was officially reported as a missing person to law enforcement, and a massive wave of panic, confusion, and deep grief rippled through her family, her friends, and the entire staff of the Mandarin Bonefish Grill, while the local community frantically scrambled to find answers and search the surrounding areas. Lee Rodarte Jr. coolly executed the next layer of his deceptive strategy, playing the role of the grieving colleague. He returned to his culinary management shifts at the restaurant exactly as normal, walking the kitchen lines, directing kitchen staff, and managing food prep while harboring the dark secret of her death. He systematically attempted to blend in as a core, helpful part of the active search party. Rodarte went so far as to actively distribute missing person flyers, featuring Savannah's face to coworkers, customers, and local businesses alike. In a display of chilling sociopathy, Rodarte comforted distraught staff members who were crying over Savannah's sudden disappearance, projecting the carefully crafted image of an innocent, deeply concerned supervisor who was desperate to see his young employee return home safely. But the ruse went even deeper. Rodarte stood face to face with Savannah's father, Dan Gold, looking him directly in the eye while expressing profound, fabricated, false concern over her safety. He offered words of sympathy, comfort, and support to a desperate, searching father, utilizing his professional position as a trusted manager to insulate himself from any creeping suspicion or scrutiny from the family. This elaborate ruse was designed to make him appear completely above reproach to everyone around him. After all, why would a man who was actively handing out search flyers and comforting the victim's family be suspected of the crime? For 48 hours, Rodarte successfully wore this mask of deception, maintaining his professional composure and managing the restaurant, while the criminal investigation intensified all around him. Entirely confident that his physical tire staging and digital fabrications would keep the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office from uncovering the truth, the elaborate mask of the grieving colleague began to permanently and rapidly fracture on August 5, 2017, when experienced investigators from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office brought Lee Rodarte Jr. in for a formal recorded interview. Detectives had been quietly scrubbing the environment surrounding the restaurant, and they now possessed the critical parking lot surveillance footage. As the interrogation progressed inside the sheriff's office, Rodarte deployed a sequence of escalating lies, completely unaware that his narrative was being systematically dismantled piece by the electronic evidence. His initial position, which detectives recorded as Lie 1, was an absolute and total denial. He claimed to the interviewing detectives that he had barely spoken to Savannah at all on the day she disappeared, and asserted with certainty that she had never been anywhere near his personal car. Detectives listened calmly to this denial before presenting him with the physical reality of the recovered surveillance tape. Faced with the undeniable visual of Savannah walking straight to his vehicle and entering it, Rodarte immediately pivoted to Lie 2. He admitted that she had indeed gotten into his car, but claimed they merely had a minor, entirely peaceful conversation, after which she calmly exited the passenger side door on her own and walked away down the public street. The absolute and spectacular collapse of his legal position occurred when detectives replayed the security video footage directly in front of him, highlighting the undeniable physical realities recorded on the tape. They pointed out the intense, minutes-long rocking of his vehicle, the erratic, desperate opening and closing of the passenger door, and the definitive fact that Savannah was never seen exiting the car alive on any angle. Realizing that his shifting alibis had completely imploded and that he had failed to account for the total lack of visual blind spots in the parking lot, Rodarte's professional composure entirely dissolved. Broken by the immense weight of the undeniable electronic evidence arrayed against him, the culinary manager finally looked at the investigators and said, "I'll tell you where I hid the body." Following his sudden confession in the sheriff's interrogation room, the grim geographic reality of Lee Rodarte Jr.'s crime was fully exposed to the recovery teams. Detectives began a deep, geographic profiling of the suspect, cross-referencing his past records and history, to understand exactly how he chose his body disposal site. They uncovered past traffic tickets dating back to 2006 that revealed a critical piece of localized information. Rodarte had previously lived on Club du Clay Road, a remote, wooded street located in the west side area of Jacksonville. This intimate, long-term familiarity with the geography explained exactly why he drove to that specific, secluded location after fleeing the Bonefish Grill parking lot with her body on the night of the murder. He knew the terrain perfectly. He knew the total lack of public surveillance cameras on that stretch of road, and he knew the exact presence of a specific retention pond located off the main roadway. When forensic recovery teams arrived at the remote retention pond off Club du Clay Road based on his confession, they were met with a horrific and difficult forensic scene. In a desperate, aggressive attempt to mask the physical trauma he had inflicted on the victim and destroy any trace of DNA or physical evidence, Rodarte had heavily burned Savannah's remains before submerging them deep underwater in the pond. Because her body had sat underwater in the retention pond for several days before his interrogation collapse led police to the site, the environmental exposure caused severe complications for the medical examiner's office. The advanced state of decomposition and the severe thermal injuries meant that the medical examiner could not isolate a precise, singular anatomical cause of death during the autopsy. However, based on the extensive soft tissue preservation and the surrounding video evidence of the parking lot struggle, the office firmly and officially classified her death as a violent homicide that was entirely consistent with strangulation. The geographic profile and the forensic recovery proved that Rodarte had utilized every piece of local knowledge he possessed to permanently erase Savannah, turning a childhood neighborhood spot into a hidden grave. As the murder case moved steadily toward the Florida judicial system, detectives uncovered the true petty catalyst behind the sudden eruption of lethal violence in the restaurant parking lot. A comprehensive review of text records between the manager and the server revealed a massive, ongoing power imbalance and professional anxiety. As a culinary manager, Rodarte was furious about a series of text messages that Savannah had sent to him earlier in the week regarding their personal lives. When she confronted him inside his vehicle that evening regarding the true status of their secret relationship, Savannah had threatened to expose their supervisor-subordinate connection directly to the restaurant's upper management and corporate offices. Fearing the immediate loss of his management job, his professional reputation, and his authority within the company, Rodarte chose to permanently silence her to protect his position. However, the legal maneuvering took a highly controversial and dramatic turn in 2019. Rodarte's defense team filed a surprise pre-trial petition under Florida's controversial Stand Your Ground immunity law. In a stunning attempt to completely rewrite the narrative of the parking lot struggle, Rodarte claimed that Savannah had suddenly become the physical aggressor inside the car. He alleged that she had slapped him and forcefully grabbed his throat inside the vehicle, and claimed that he had merely accidentally snapped her neck while trying to defend his own life from her assault. This legal gambit was met with absolute judicial rejection from the court system. Both the trial judge and the First District Court of Appeals completely dismissed and rejected the petition. The courts ruled with absolute clarity that Rodarte's subsequent actions, deliberately slashing her car tires, sending fraudulent text messages to gaslight her parents, heavily burning her physical remains, and tossing her into a remote retention pond, were entirely and fundamentally inconsistent with a genuine lawful act of self-defense or an accidental death. The Stand Your Ground gambit failed completely, stripping away his final legal shield and forcing him to face the absolute certainty of a criminal jury trial. The final legal reckoning for Lee Rodarte Jr. arrived on February 16, 2021, inside a Jacksonville courtroom. Facing the absolute certainty of a first-degree murder conviction and a mandatory life sentence without parole, if the case proceeded before a jury. Rodarte chose to abandon his defense and accepted a negotiated plea deal, formally pleading guilty to second-degree murder. On March 11, 2021, Judge Jeb Branham presided over the highly emotional sentencing hearing. He sentenced the 28-year-old former culinary manager to 40 years in Florida State Prison, granting him credit for the time he had already served since his initial arrest in 2017. During the extensive background investigation conducted by the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, detectives uncovered a shocking and dark family parallel that left a permanent, grim impression on the case file. It was revealed that domestic homicide and violent crime ran incredibly deep within Rodarte's immediate biological family network. At the exact time of his arrest for the murder of Savannah Gold, Rodarte's biological sister, Amber Camarillo, was already sitting inside a Jacksonville jail cell, awaiting her own separate trial for an unrelated 2016 motel murder. She was later convicted of second-degree murder as well, meaning that two biological siblings were simultaneously serving massive sentences in the Florida state system for separate, violent homicides. Today, Lee Rodarte Jr. remains completely incarcerated within the Florida Department of Corrections, serving out the remainder of his 40-year term in a high-security facility. The digital smokescreen he attempted to build with her phone, the physical sabotage of her car tire, and the horrific disposal in the West Side retention pond ultimately failed to shield him from the relentless march of forensic justice, leaving Savannah Gold's family with the permanent memory of a talented artist whose life was cut short by a manager's ultimate betrayal. If you found this deep dive into the legal and psychological layers of this case meaningful, please subscribe to the channel. Your support means a lot. Don't forget to hit the like button if you appreciate the effort that goes into uncovering these real-life cases. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and I'll see you in the next video.